We'll wait a little more to until other people join. I think we can see.
Oh, you had a slide for that too.
Yes.
All right, nice.
One of the reasons I think I already told you about this, Mohit, right?
Mm-hmm.
When I was starting to make examples of design, right? I was sitting and I wanted to make different, what do you say, grades of design. So I
Mm-hmm.
started with something which is good, and then I wanted to make something which is above average, and I wanted to make something which is just average, and I wanted
Mm-hmm.
to make a bad design. But making good design was sort of easy for me right now, but when it actually came to bad design, it was seriously not possible. Because when we actually try with it, like when you go with a free mind and when you open a software and when you're starting with no ideas and planning and things like that, you will start finding these opportunities out there. When you take a typeface and when you put it there, automatically your mind finds these opportunities where this is going to fit, right? Where these things are going to go and what makes sense there. And without thinking, without your active intervention, your mind is already guiding you to those opportunities, right? So
Yeah.
it is very difficult to break it. You have to sort of completely say that no, 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 I don't want to listen to my instincts and I want to intentionally make bad designs. And it is a really, really hard process.
Mm-hmm.
So see, and again, the whole tone of this is making like it's a reverse thought, right? So
Mm-hmm.
when you actually understand and why it actually is very important to learn all these and practice good designs is that it once it actually
Yes.
gets into your muscle memory, even when you're down, you will never have something called a creative block, right? So that's something I think I'm pretty sure that you have been through that scenario, right?
Mm-hmm.
Um, if I'm asking you to design something, right, you are not stuck. Right. At any point of time, when let's say it's at midnight or it's morning or whatever time it is, and I'm asking you to just make a poster, and you do not say that no, I'm not inspired anymore. I don't know what I am not ready to work and all that.
Mm-hmm.
It just comes to you. You don't have to. You can just take a back seat and let your muscle memory do the job, and it will come out as a good design. Right.
Yeah.
So
Yeah.
that's the actual superpower a designer should be aiming for. Not, all the other jargon, all the other things that is it's useless. But building that muscle memory and knowledge that when you look at something and you understand that okay, this is working and I don't even have to think about it. I know that when I do something, it is going to be good. Right.
Mm-hmm.
So yeah, what I wanted to show you, and this is very interesting, right, is that when I was looking at this, right, and I was going to Google and I wanted to sort of understand what exactly is bad design, right?
Mm-hmm.
So uh, when I went here, and I will tell you the problem in this, right? So if you go to Google, just randomly, if you go to Google and search for bad graphic design, right, you're gonna get these kind of stuff, right?
Mm-hmm.
And the thing is that this is not what you need to be scared about. This is okay. See, this is tagged already. This is saying people are saying that this is bad graphic design and all that, right? Then I
Mm-hmm.
went through it and I said that okay, it's not really, really important to take this and talk about this, right? There are so many things which are wrong here. Right. We don't have
Mm-hmm.
to basically take it and say that okay, this is a bad design because and this is a lot of videos and a lot of actually designers do this. They take these kind of stuff and talk about their hierarchy is wrong, the typography is wrong, and all that stuff, right? These
Mm-hmm.
are the perfect examples for that. Right. So I'm not actually worried about it. And when I went here, I actually felt like I don't have to take anything from here and talk about this as a bad graphic design and all that. But what actually interested me is here, if you remove the keyword bad from here and just search graphic design in Google, you will find a lot more bad graphic design. No, seriously. So
Yeah.
think about that, right? So when people are going here, this is something which happens in design learning, right? And this is
Mm-hmm.
one of the reasons that we have always been saying that do not trust Google with these kind of stuff, right? So when you actually type graphic design here, and if you just scroll down, you can see graphic design, which is really, honestly bad, right?
Mm-hmm.
Nothing. See, this is
It's
just graphic design search, and look at this. Can you actually find something which is decent in this? It is
no.
impossible. Now, if you go here and you search for something called brochure design or anything like that, say brochure design, brochure graphic design. See, look at this. We didn't add the keyword bad in here. Right, that keyword is not here. We just search for brochure graphic design, or let's say brochure design. Make it very clear, Google, what we are looking for. Okay, so see, now you see this is the dangerous terrain.
Mm-hmm.
Right. This is because people are going to go here. When somebody is trying to study design, right, they are never going to look for bad graphic design. They will just look for brochure design, right? This is what they are stumbling upon in here. And can you see something which is good? No, no, there is nothing good here. But when they are looking through it, when people are just going through it, they are not understanding that this is bad. See, when we were searching earlier, we
Mm-hmm.
have this in our mindset that okay, I'm looking for bad graphic design and I'm seeing bad graphic design. So it's very clear, right? But when
Mm-hmm.
you're here, when you're looking for brochure design, these are just showing you brochure designs. The hidden fact is that these are all bad graphic design. But who is saying that? Nobody is saying anything about that here.
Nope.
Right. This is basically coming from, or this is pulled from template sites and things like that, which actually has better SEO. That is the only thing, right? And it's showing all those templates that you can buy, and people actually think that okay, this is how graphic brochure design needs to be, or this is how it should be right now, right? People are going to take that stuff. If you think about something else, like let's say poster design,
Mm-hmm.
look at that,
Mm-hmm.
right? So this is what happens, right? So this is one thing that I wanted to actually mention here. Like when you understand bad designs, it is not that bad. That is the major thing. I mean, see, there is something like the most I forgot the actual quote about it, but the the most brilliant trick that the devil actually played was to make us believe that the devil doesn't exist.
Okay.
So
All
this
right.
is something like that, right?
Mm-hmm.
This is a decoy. Like when you actually think about that design, so people will go here and maybe they will look at bad graphic design and they will go here for their self satisfaction and they'll say that okay, I'm not creating something like this, so I will be a good designer, right?
Mm-hmm.
But if you just go, and this is what their benchmark is, they are looking at this graphic design and they are sort of looking at this and saying that okay, I am creating something which is closer to this, so this definitely needs to be good design. This is not good design. So if you look at any of the stuff, brochure design or magazine design or anything like that in Google, because of the SEO of these template sites, you are going to be presented with a lot of seriously bad work, right? Which sort of like makes you believe that it's good work, right? So you need to understand what exactly is the bad work in India, right? What is bad design is something that you need to understand. So I wanted to ask you this question, Mohit, first.
Yeah.
What is your understanding of bad design? How will you define a bad design?
Mm, it's okay. That's not something I put a lot of thought for before,
Yeah,
but
no, spontaneously,
it's
what
like
comes to your mind? Yeah, that is
it's
exactly what
like
we want, right? So we never think about the definitions of something which is bad.
yeah.
We always think about something which is good. Okay, what is a good movie? We have a definition for a good movie. We have a
Mm-hmm.
definition for good food. We have a definition for everything that is good out there, but we fail to identify or define what is bad. So what happens is that when we do something bad, we
Mm-hmm.
don't realize it because we have never defined it, right? So we don't think
True.
that whatever we are doing is bad. Like we keep doing bad stuff without understanding what exactly is bad stuff,
Mm-hmm.
right? We always
I,
think that we are beyond that point.
I think one of the
Yeah,
things
you
is
say.
like, is it serving the purpose it was supposed to? Is it doing that job well? That's one of the things. So
Yes.
if it's doing that, it's a good design. If it's not, it is a bad design. Um,
Yeah, one
I think
parameter of it,
one
definitely.
parameter.
Yes.
I think if I go with the standards, I mean the three parameters that we set for a good design, right? And if I just reverse it, so
Yes,
the functionality, standards, and aesthetics. So what I talked about
exactly.
functionality. Um, okay, you have a slide. you okay?
The
Yeah.
same thing, like what when we defined, and this is something that we started talking about in the beginning also, right?
Mm-hmm.
When we started defining good design, we never actually taught them what exactly is bad design.
Mm-hmm.
So they didn't realize the fact that when they are not achieving the parameters of good design, they are falling into the category of bad design. Right?
Yeah.
There is no middle ground there. It's basically either good design or bad design. There is nothing called decent design. I mean, there is bad design and there is good design. Decent
Mm-hmm.
design is also bad design. if it is not good design.
Yeah,
Yeah, so you reverse it. So
yeah.
functional aspect is one part of it, right?
Mhm.
Now, the other things also, right? So what does this mean to you? Like, let's say aesthetics, and what is the point? How will you define it to somebody? Like, what is aesthetics?
The exterior appeal of anything. So is it actually attracting you? Is it making you just go towards it? Something that's not in your area, let's say some kind of a billboard or something on a bookstore. It's not supposed to be, or it's not in the mainline area, but despite of that, it just catches your eye. Is it able to do that? And it's only
Okay.
going to be able to do that if it has good aesthetics. That's one of the things. That's how it pulls you in. I think one of the next thing that happens is now you go and okay, it's pull you, and now you try to figure out okay, what is it about? And you're only able to figure out if it's following some kind of standard. So you
Okay.
recognize, okay, this is what it's about. And then is it functional? Is it actually letting you know what it was supposed to? So now you're
Yes.
comfortable enough in that area, and then you look at it, and maybe it's telling you what a book is about, or maybe it's a bestseller, something that recently came out, something that's very indie, and maybe it
Yeah.
did that with the cover and everything else that it had. Was it actually achieving all of those things?
True.
Great. Oh, mm, so yeah, I think covering that part up.
Yes. Yes. So let's say this is something that I took it from not the bad design section in here or the slides that you actually see here is
Okay.
something that I picked from graphic design. This general works which were out there in the
Hmm.
internet for the public to see, which was just start graphic design. There's no bad or good on top of this, but this is generally what when people actually search for graphic design, these are things that we actually get right. This is right there when you
You
search
know
for
what?
graphic design. Yeah.
It's very present around us. But the thing is, all of these stuff it's handed out to you. You never go and approach this. It's always
Yes.
somebody who is going to hand it out to you, like forcefully. Yeah, this is there you go, there you go.
Yeah.
That's how this familiarity is there. It's not because that it was a good design, because it was forced into your standards right now. That's the
It is
only
forced me to
pretext.
stand. See, that's again something which is happening with the SEO thing that I was talking about, right?
Yeah, yeah, yeah.
So when I searched graphic design, I was actually presented with it on my computer. So
Hmm.
none of my browsing habits or none of my preferences were taken into consideration. It was just forced to me because of the SEO, the money that these guys are paying to the internet. This was actually shoot to me, and I randomly collected it. Right, I randomly went and I collected it, and trust me, I never searched bad. And when you look for bad, the bad graphic design, when you search for bad graphic design, the kind of works that you're getting right now is actually better than what you get here.
Yeah.
Because there is a lot of anti-design in there that we can still make use of, right? So
Hmm.
this is actually this is really bad graphic design who are still living among good designs, right? And cheating people, right? So these are the aliens in graphic design, I would say.
Hmm.
And if you look at this, right, there are certain parameters. Now, I told you, I mean, as you were saying, like, if you take the definition of good design and reverse it, that will become the definition of bad design,
Yeah.
right? Like, what is functionally wrong? It needs to have weak aesthetics, so it doesn't approve or it doesn't sort of like appeal to anybody. That is wrong
Hmm.
here. And then the lack of standards, right? So things that people are comfortable with, or there are certain things that people can understand if you are presenting it in a certain way
Hmm.
if that is not considered at all. I mean, considering to break that is another thing, but if you're not considering about what people are comfortable with, right? You don't think about the other person, you don't think about the user, you're just thinking about yourself, and your bias is
Hmm.
driving all your decisions. It's lack of standards, right? You're not actually setting it to a benchmark. You're not saying that this
Hmm.
is how the work needs to be presented in that particular medium or anything like that.
Hmm.
So it doesn't do the function it is supposed to do. It doesn't appeal to anybody, and it
Hmm.
doesn't make anybody comfortable. Then it is a bad design. And when I was looking at these stuff, those qualities were actually there. I know that nobody went intentionally to do this like less functional and all that stuff, but it was there.
Hmm.
See, if you just randomly look at the stuff, see, look at this poster, creative graphics design. See, there is a typo right there, which actually negated the first point, right? Functionally wrong. See, there is nothing
Hmm.
called graphics, right? So it is same graphics design. And if you look at weak aesthetics, like look at the type choices that they have, right? It looks at all these stuff that they have. And then
Mm-hmm.
if you look at the standardization of the whole thing, like what is the hierarchy of this thing, right? What will people understand from here? Now that somebody sees this thing, how will they take an action? Because they are basically staying followers on Facebook icon and Instagram icon. So there is no link or anything, but it's basically doing that. Now,
Okay.
what is the standards, right, that they are sort of following here? We don't know. And if you go through each and every design that is
Yeah.
there, this will be there. Functional errors, weak aesthetics, and lack of standards. But if
Mm-hmm.
you look at that, like, see, let's say if you're looking at the bad graphic design that we are talking about, it's more. I mean, that was a planned exercise. A lot of that work that you see there was a planned exercise to make it bad in every sort of way, right? So it became a novelty right now. Like if you look at bad design, I'm just saying, like if you go
Mm-hmm.
to bad design, not yeah, bad graphic design, pretty much everything that you see here is created to actually depict bad design. So their design intention was to create bad design. So is it a bad design?
Mm-hmm.
Because it is functionally correct. It is aesthetically appealing and
Okay.
it is
Okay.
standardized. Because the
Mm-hmm.
goal was to create a bad design, right? So
Yeah.
it's actually a good design of a bad design. This is sort of like
All right.
Inception like, but it is actually if you think about it, right? So that's the reason why I said that a lot of these designs actually make a lot of sense than if you are looking at normal stuff, graphic
Mm-hmm.
design, and you see a lot of bad graphic design. And this is what inspires a lot of people, right? Regular people, when they are not academically trained, they don't have a direction to actually study graphic design. They go here and they look for stuff, and this is their design learning. And this is where it all goes wrong, right? So let's take a deeper look into that, right? So what I've done here is that I just wanted to sort of list up with these examples that I've found, right?
Mm-hmm.
Uh, I just took some key points that was common in all these designs, this bad designs, and I just wanted to talk about it, right? Like, what are the ingredients of, and I wanted to know your opinion on this stuff as well. So, like, let's say if we are dividing or the things that you need to have in a bad design, and
Mm-hmm.
if you follow these stuff and you put that into your design, the design will become bad. Right. So let's get into the first one and talk about it. So we'll come back to this brief a little bit later.
All right.
Now, the first one is a messed up process flow, right? That is very important for a bad design, right? If
All
you
right.
because I'll tell you why. See,
Mm-hmm.
let's say as a designer, you have a process flow, right?
Mm-hmm.
Uh, let's just you don't have to talk about a particular example, but generically, let's say that if I'm handing you a design task or you're
Yeah.
freelancing on a design project and you have to make, let's say, a poster design or something like that.
Mm-hmm.
Can you just quickly tell me the process flow there? What is your process flow?
Okay. First, I'll go through the brief and have
Mm,
a talk with whoever's given me the brief. And I'll summarize the points and be like, wait, this is what I understood from it. And I think this is what you're trying to achieve here. Once that's cleared up, I'll go with and look for designs and inspirations that's very similar to it. Or
okay.
maybe just very openly look for visual inspiration. Once I have that, then I'll start exploring, do a few iterations, and then at the end of it, just see like, is it serving the purpose that it was meant to? That will be very vaguely the process
Okay.
pursuing this.
Okay. So even let's so you basically start with an empathizing process, right?
I do,
You try
yeah.
to understand what is the problem that you're trying to solve,
Hmm.
right? Or what is the story that you are going to tell, and
Yep, yep.
all these interactions that you need to clarify in the first step itself. You clarify it.
Hmm.
Then basically it is your inspiration, part, right?
Yeah.
You get inspired. So you're looking at a lot of designs, then you are going to look at treatments,
Hmm.
you are going to, and whatever you can adapt and all that, right? So then
Yes.
you start working on the design process.
Hmm.
Now, I want to go a little deeper into your process, right? Your
Okay.
process flow.
All right.
Let's say you did all the pre-production stuff and you are sitting in front of your tool, right? Your
Okay.
design tool,
Hmm.
and you are creating a poster.
Yeah.
What is the first thing that you do there?
I'll get out of type. So everything that's related to type, I'll just get on the canvas first. just arrange
Okay.
it.
Okay.
That's one
Yes.
thing. So I have everything what I need to work with. I'll work with a hierarchy of that stuff. See how an
Okay.
image can work with it. Is the image going to be that's going to take up all the whole background? Is that going to capture the attention or the text is going to? So that is the other thing I'm going to play around with. Then finally see like how that is going to be at the end of it. So there's going to be a lot of iterations between those. Mostly
Cool.
just
See,
text, image.
that actually makes a lot of sense. So you start with type. You said that, right?
I do. Hmm.
So let's say let me put that question in another format. So let's say
Okay.
type, shape, colors,
Hmm.
imagery, right?
Okay.
So major building blocks of design. And
Yeah.
when you're doing a graphic design project, what is the order that you will treat these elements? Like which one will you touch first? Type, right? You said.
I'll always just type first. Yeah.
What
And then,
else? What is next? What comes next?
oh yeah, this is an interesting point. Like you talked about shapes. So I can
Yeah.
also use types as a shape. That doesn't have to
Okay.
be something that's readable.
Yeah,
So
it doesn't have to be a different element. Yeah, definitely.
mhm.
Definitely. So
um,
you work with that also. So do you figure that out earlier in the process, or you're thinking you're just playing around with type and you figure out okay whether I can use this as a shape or how does it work?
I do a few iterations. So one of the instances could be like I'll take the type first. In the other instance, I might take the image first, or maybe the shape first, and see how that goes around. And according to it, like
Okay.
I'll keep the other elements as complementary for it, and let's see like how is that working out.
But order of how you
Mhm.
select elements, right, or how you choose elements to work with, um, some idea is pushing that order, right?
It
Like,
is.
should I
It
work
is.
with type or should I
Mhm.
work with colors first and all that? So
Mhm.
where is that coming from?
That is coming from where is it going to be presented, and
Okay.
what purpose is it serving. Let's say if it's for a film, maybe it's
Yeah.
related to some kind of a film. I'll go with the image first. I'll try to see
Okay.
something
Got it.
that
Got
is
it. Got
going to
it.
be very attractive in that area, and I'll use type that's very small. That's just
Yes.
complementing it, and it's kind of giving the vibe out. If it's about, let's say, an event or something, I'll make sure the type is the thing that you take notice of first. What is the thing about? Right. The shapes thing, let's say we are talking about designs. So maybe I'll just play around and put the shapes in more hierarchy here. Maybe there's a shape language that I created and I'll use that in the design first so that the moment anybody looks at it, they're like, okay, it's something about design. Just very immediately
Okay.
it
I
communicates
think
that.
I think that is that's a beautiful way you put it, and I have never heard anybody say it like that also because
Okay.
depending on the medium,
Hmm.
right? Depending on the medium or the output that you have to work with, you are looking and you're choosing the priority of elements to work with, right?
Yeah.
That's a beautiful thought, and it makes a lot of sense because when you're working for film, and if you're working on a film title sequence or
Hmm.
a screen grab or a screen treatment or something like that,
Yeah.
you need to make sure that your imagery is actually getting a lot of attention and it is
Yeah.
getting and nothing else is compromising that and everything else is complementing that, right? So
Hmm.
I have noticed that also in the works that you do, that when you're working with film and all that, your type has a certain style which
Yeah.
is not dominating over the picture,
Hmm.
right? But when you're working on certain other mediums like let's say Instagram posters or social media videos and things like that, sometimes the type is dominating over the other stuff, and we actually pay attention to the type because the medium that you're seeing through it is too small. And
Hmm.
if the type is actually smaller than that, you might stop registering that thing, right?
Hmm.
So that's a really clever workflow, right? Because you understand the medium and accordingly you work on it. And then all the things that you're working with is complementing your primary element for that medium,
Yeah.
right?
Yeah.
Okay, that's really interesting. So that's the process flow that you follow, right? Okay,
I do.
okay. Now they see that is also one problem, right? So if
Hmm.
people don't have that idea, right, which
Hmm.
element to choose to work with first,
Hmm.
that actually creates a bad design at the end, right?
It
Because
does.
if let's say if they are choosing, a bad, like the wrong, I wouldn't say bad, the wrong
Hmm.
element to work with first,
Hmm.
and let's think that that image that they've chosen or that element that they have chosen is a bad choice, then everything else, trying to complement that bad thing, everything else needs to be bad, right? So you are sort of forced to, let's say
Okay.
you're choosing a
Hmm.
wrong image, then
Hmm.
everything else needs to be wrong because that is your primary element, right? You're trying to match something um, to something that is already bad,
Okay, that's
right?
quite the cohesiveness you illustrated right now. That
Yeah, the effort that we have to make bad design, you can see that, right? So it's easy when you think about it to make good design, because currently with all the tools and things that you have, right, they're limiting you with the kind of software that you have, with the kind of resources that you have and all that. And one thing I think, that's something that you told me once,
Mhm.
when you were addressing some batches and students and all that. They said that, see, when you go to curated sources, they feel like they are limiting, right? They're
Yeah, yeah.
limiting their exposure and all that stuff. So when we are with Google, we feel that, okay, we have a lot of resources, right? When you look at Google and you look at graphic design, you can see a lot of work. But then, why should we go to, in that scenario? What people are thinking is that, why should we go to, let's say, Cosmos and look at graphic design when there is not that amount of work in here, right? It's very, very limiting. So why should we look at curated sources like this, is a question that they might ask, or even to go to Behance and look at discovery and all that stuff, right? So
Mhm.
what do you have to say about that kind of mindset when it comes to it? I mean, does it matter that whether they have a lot of freedom to look at stuff, or you are looking at some constraints which they can trust, right? Why is that happening? Why do you think that psychology is there in people, that they have to have Google and unlimited number of design works to look at to get inspired?
Starting out, I think they're not understanding is like why curation is necessary. First off,
Mhm.
gotta know the fact like you don't know what you're doing if you're a beginner. You need
True, true.
somebody who is actually doing good work to tell you like these are the stuff that works and it doesn't. Because as a beginner in anything, you wouldn't know actually what's good and what's going to actually help you. But in fact, like if you try to take that thing as a self-learning, okay, no, I'm just gonna go and look for everything that's out there. Yeah, there's already everything out there. That's why I think the AI chatbot that we work with, it only
Yeah.
replicates what we know about
Yes.
because it is actually taking up all the information that's out there. And out there, there's good stuff and there's bad stuff.
Yeah.
But the thing is, if you know what's good, you can get better results out of it because you knew about that. When you didn't,
Yes.
with the same
Yes.
chatbot, you're not able to get the information or the resources that might actually help you.
True.
One of the examples for it. So I think that
Yeah. It makes sense. Yes. Yes.
that one thought process is missing in a lot of, I think, beginner students when they're looking into it.
I think so, because that abundance, right? That
Mhm,
concept of abundance or overwhelming factor is something that amuses them still, right? So when you go that, okay, the same thing happens when you go to a buffet restaurant, right?
mhm,
The number of items in a spread amuses us, like saying that, okay, they have a lot of stuff in display, but the moment you're done with starters, you're done. You cannot eat single bite. You don't, right? But
yeah.
you sort of think that, okay, this has a wonderful spread. They have like 15 items, and then all that stuff and all those things. But we
Mhm,
don't need that, right? We don't need any of the stuff. We will
yeah.
basically end up taking one or two good items. We'll eat it and we'll get out, right?
Mhm,
The same thing. I mean, you're going there without any guidance, and you're seeing these kind of like a huge pool of bad content, and how will you choose from it without that discipline in you? What is good, what is bad, right? And from that you need to make a choice and you need to study, but it is impossible, right? So that is the reason that curation is really required. Somebody needs to be guiding you, and when somebody is not physically present with you, you need to trust somebody, right, who curates stuff for you online, like Behance, or maybe a Pinterest channel of a Pinterest board
ABDC.
of a famous designer. Yeah,
Yeah, yeah.
ABDC, and the kind of projects that they feature, right? And you will know that, okay, this is what is happening exactly in the industry currently. So if I go to Behance Discover today and look at the featured content, most of them are pinned today. So you'll know that, okay, this is what is trending today, or this is something which is acceptable today.
Mhm.
And you do that tomorrow, you do that day after tomorrow, and you see that the trends are changing every single day, right?
Even
There is
actually,
there are new things coming. Yeah,
yeah, yeah, actually, this kind of brings in a thought. Like, think about it. Any kind of design talks that's out there,
yeah,
you would never see something like this. I mean, they are being invited to talk for a reason, and if you look the kind of works they're presenting,
yeah.
it's going to be very different from the general stuff that you're seeing out there.
Yes, yes.
They're given a stage for a reason, right?
They're getting that visibility. They are getting that invitation for a reason, right? Why are designers, or if you look at any great designers out there, what made them great, right? What made them good designers out there? We need to understand that first. They didn't become these famous, highly paid designers for making the brochures that we just saw in Google. They made some really iconic, uh, design pieces, and you need to be aware about that. And see, that's something which is very, very important, that you don't look for the kind of stuff in here, accumulated sources. Now, as we were saying, right, see, one major ingredient of a bad design is typography, and we just realized it right now while we were doing that project, right? Nothing was sitting straight until we found the perfect bad typeface out there. Right. We had to find that bad typeface.
Hmm.
And it took us a while. But a lot of people who are generally, you don't have this burden of good muscle memory, can easily create it. And I'm seriously jealous about those kind of people. Like, how can they
Right.
just pick up bad typeface just like that? I mean, where are
So
they finding this many bad typefaces? It's really hard to get bad typefaces, but they are able to do it. So bad typeface is one of the key out there. So I just want to ask you, like, when you are doing design, um, what are your considerations when you're choosing typography?
first off, like what kind of information it is? Is it something that's going to be important that people read and understand it? Or is it more important that it just catches somebody attention? So accordingly, I'll choose a typeface. Something that is, as I said, a typeface could just be used as an alternate for shapes. So in that way, it can be very decorative. You can even use windings, as David Carson would at times.
Yes, yes,
I think in one of the times, in one of the interviews, he talked about that. Like he didn't like the article, he converted the whole thing into windings, and that
yes,
looked
yes,
quite a
yes.
bit aside.
Yeah.
So that's again,
So
so that
I think the functionality was not the key there, right? In that, it's more like a fine art project, right? It's not. It's
kind of
more
was.
abstract than it can be. Yeah.
Yeah, yeah. So again, the functionality of that is going to decide what kind of typefaces I'm going to choose for the project.
Hmm.
Is it more about expression? Then it's going to be more free in its expression. If it's more about getting the information out there, it's going to be very controlled.
Okay.
Something that's
But
yeah,
okay, one other thing that I want to ask is that
yeah,
is it completely dependent on the medium then, not the medium, right? The kind of treatment that you want to give to that particular design, right?
mhm,
So, for instance, let's think of it like genres of design, right?
okay,
So you can actually do a design being very, very articulate, right? You can actually
hmm,
do it very abstract. You
hmm,
can do it very experimental, explorative. You can actually make it very active, right?
hmm,
So this decisions actually depend on the style that you're choosing or the genre that you're choosing to tell a story, right?
true, yeah.
So how will you choose the genre first then? Like, do I want to say this in an abstract format? Do I have to say this? Because it can work. I mean, that is sort of
True,
really
true, true,
dependent
true.
on the medium, right? Yeah.
Yeah, yeah, yeah. So think about it and like what kind of story are you going to, then the empathy part of it comes in again. Let's say if
Okay.
I'm making something that's for designers, it's going to be a whole lot more experimental right now. I think
Yes.
one of the synthesizers, I forgot Nobi or something that I showed you, right? And how
Yeah.
the
No.
website
Yeah.
was laid out. It
Yes.
was basically targeted towards somebody who's really into aesthetics and all. And the way they've done it, it was not functional if you see it from a standardized font. The
Okay.
actual product was blurred out and the background was visible, but it was catching a lot of attention though.
Yeah. Yeah.
Uh,
I remember that. Yes. Yes. Yes.
so that curation is going to definitely filter out the people. So he's trying to communicate to a certain group of people. So accordingly, we'll choose what kind of genre are we going for. If it's for
Okay.
somebody, a very generalized audience, that is where we won't go with the anti-design stuff. Not at all,
Hmm.
because that there the interpretation might be a little bit different. But if it's somebody for like a curated gallery or people who have that exposure for that stuff, we can be a whole lot more
Got it.
experimental in this
So
area.
okay. That's again a very valid point. So one way was the medium, and
Mhm.
now it actually went beyond the medium and it went to the audience, actually.
Yeah.
Right. So there is definitely a consideration that comes to you when you think about the medium that you're going to work with. And
Mhm.
also the next consideration is that what set of audience is using that medium to watch this content. Right.
Yeah.
So it can be going through the same medium to different, set of people,
Mhm.
but you can still do a sort of, decision depending on who is going to watch it, right? What kind of category of people are going to watch it? Is
Mhm.
it a niche? Is it coming from that particular set? And I want to sort of filter out the unnecessary audience, clarify, clear them out of the way so that this goes straight into that category of people. Right. Okay.
Hmm.
That makes sense. That makes sense. So that genre also is something that you decide after all these is done, right?
True. Yeah,
It always comes first. So you basically do that decision, and with that clarity, you'll start working, right?
I would. I would. But then again, I mean, if we are going deeper into that, there's a whole lot of iteration you can still play around with in there.
But that's
Yeah,
still
that's
also there's still a base that you're starting with,
yeah, yeah,
right?
definitely.
With
Yep,
that
yep.
genre and the treatment in your mind, with
Hmm. Hmm.
all those, after the, after considering the audience, the medium, and everybody. But in after going with that base, you still play around to figure out the various iterations that is possible from that.
Hmm. Hmm.
Right. Okay.
Yeah, yeah,
So it still will give you that constraint of that genre, but you still will
true.
be able to play around and create something really, really good. Okay. That actually works. Yes. Really interesting. Now,
I.
one other thing that I noticed and I wanted to talk about is in a lot of designs, like we saw a lot of bad designs out there.
Hmm.
Um, One thing is that I think there is this term, I don't know whether that term exists, right? It's called over designing. Right. So I hope you understood what I meant, right? Over
Hmm.
designing stuff. Because when they're working on a project, they sort of like feel that, I wasn't able to do much into this. And just to showcase that they can do more, there is a tendency to a lot of designers to do more stuff, right? So when they try to add these random stuff into it, the things that there is absolutely no connection. Right. There is no point when they are adding an element into it. Let's say a decorative element that they are adding into their design, or a
Hmm.
particular line that they are adding into a design. Uh, there is no connection, right? But so two things that I have noticed happens a lot in these kind of design is that there is no orient. Sort of when a user looks at it, they are disoriented because there is a lot of complexity in the design, and because of this complexity, people start looking for connections. They will try to get into one path and which will lead them nowhere. Right? They think that, okay,
Yeah.
this line has a connection here, and then they look at that and they know that, oh, that doesn't make any sense. Why? Right? You might actually see a lot in when
Hmm.
you're looking for those brochure designs and things like that, right? Bad design Google search that we were doing. Not bad design. I think it's just
I
graphic
think
design.
taking up
So
that interior design example for that, so you have a lot of stuff within that room and you just don't know where to go. There's no path that's clear
yes,
for you.
yes.
You're just trying to jump.
Nothing is clear. You might get on a path and you might actually
Mhm.
go there and you will realize that, okay, what is the point of this? If, for instance, I'm just looking at this particular poster, right? It's a very templatey poster.
Mhm.
Um, so see, again, this is hidden as poster design. Nobody is mentioning that this is bad design, but this is actually bad design. This is the more dangerous type of bad design, right? Because it is disguising, it is cheating, right?
But
So let's take a look at these, right? So you look at all the elements which are actually here in this particular design, right? They've added that. So there is the typography that is there. There are shapes in there. There are colors that they're using in there. But
mhm.
can you find a connection between this? I'm not unable to find a connection between these elements and what actually is the motive to add any of these elements in here. So it's sort of pushing us into a path thinking that there is some sort of meaning on these shapes, but we realize that there is nothing.
Mhm.
Right. So it just unnecessarily complicates stuff. What is the psychology behind these kind of stuff? What do you think?
So
See,
this shadows,
this is over designing basically, like, because
it,
they basically created all these elements and they thought that, okay, this space seems very empty, so let's put something in there, right? That could be something that happened, right?
dude, there's shadows in everything.
There
Those
is
little,
shadows in it.
those little circles are shadows. What?
Yes, these circles have shadows.
Okay, okay.
This thing, this particular, block that is floating has a shadow. This thing has shadows there. These dots have shadows, and it's sort of like beveled and embossed.
Yeah.
So, and that shadows is here, but here it is no shadow. There is no shadow. So think about this, right? This is what I'm saying. It's a
Mm-hmm.
random design we just found out, right?
Mm-hmm.
So this set of shape, which is technically impossible to cast a shadow here because there are three layers of stuff, right?
Mm-hmm.
So it needs to be sitting in one surface to cast shadow. It's actually there on top of three different surfaces with the distance is really because there is a soft shadow, which means that those layers are far apart, right? So this is floating on top of that, but this has a shadow. Where there is nothing, there is no shadow in this. So doesn't make any
For sure.
sense, right? Somebody just put that idea there, but there is no logical sense to these elements that is being added, right? So that's point that I wanted to say, like misguided connections, right? And
Mhm.
I had absolutely no reference to this example when I was writing that slide because I just randomly found out this right now in our Google search. So, but
Mhm.
then look at that random example that we took, right? So there is a design idea, and that somebody thought that okay, we'll actually develop it and add a shadow to it, but where it is placed doesn't make any sense. Again, my question here is basically this. Um, you start with some primary elements, right? One of the really interesting things about your designs in particular is the artifacts that you're adding into it. Like, let's say the complementary elements that you're adding into your design, right? It could be just shapes, right? Very,
Mhm.
very small shapes into it. Could be a texture that you're adding on top of it, like a noise texture, or maybe some sort of paper texture onto it. Um, so where do you get that idea from? I mean, how do you approach that process? Like the complementary setup.
I think being exposed to a lot of design styles and the books that I've come across, the kind of variations I've seen in designs, and how they use these different elements to direct your attention towards something. Just the lines that you're talking about, that's very near utilitarian stuff. You can
Okay.
do a whole lot with that. And near utilitarian is like you're using those lines in a way where it's kind of disorienting, but still it's get your attention towards something. Like let's say there's just one cross that you're making with two lines, and there's one of the other elements at the very opposite of it. It's making a connection, a diagonal connection for it. That's
Yeah.
one of the elements for it. And then shape stuff. There's a whole lot of designers. I think Oakley or something. I showed you. I forgot this designer's name, but he was working with a lot of shape stuff. I think that's
Okay.
where I got from. Like just like typography, you can build a language for your shapes first, and within those shapes, try to make something out of it, and that creates a whole cohesive language for it. So
Okay.
now I have something that I can work with that there. So
Hmm.
yeah, those were the approaches how I would use stuff and just try to make it complement every other thing that's within the design.
Yeah, because it could be a simple stuff like a small animation that you're adding into it, right?
Yeah,
So
yeah.
because there is a continuing theme in a lot of your designs of rotation, right? Rotation is something that you use a lot in a lot of animations. It
Oh
includes
yeah.
shapes rotating, right? So, is there a particular idea that you want to convey with those kind of micro elements, micro animations, I would say? But this is not only about motion design, right? I have noticed similar stuff in your static design as well. There are elements. It could be just lines that you are using. It could be just what do you say, an orphan type that actually stands somewhere. So, how do you basically say that this is, or is there a particular way that you actually bring that into it, or is there any relevance to these kind of things
Mhm.
to support it, or is just complementary that can be avoided at any point?
I mean, if you can, you can always choose to avoid it, and that's always a choice. But what I'm going with is like the one thing that you talked about in static design. So within that static
Yeah,
design, if you're showing this that kind of disorientation, what
yeah,
it feels like as if like that it's not static anymore. It feels like there's some kind of motion still within the design. So let's
yes,
say the often types text you're talking about. So there's something here, then there's something here. Feels like okay,
yes.
it's going in this direction.
So okay, that's another thing that I wanted to ask.
Yeah,
So balance, is it about balance? Like when you do your design and
yeah.
you look at it and you feel that okay, there is something that I need to actually put into balance as a design, and is that coming from there? That is that the starting point?
It sometimes says it's not always about the balance. Maybe sometimes it's about creating a disbalance. But
Okay.
yeah, base, if you're talking about, yeah,
Yeah,
it is
even
creating that.
creating a disbalance actually comes from the concept of balance, right?
It
So
does, you can
my
say.
question is basically that, like,
Okay.
is balance that starting point of that thought? Like, okay, once I've finished my main
Hmm.
design elements, my primary coating of the design, then now I need to put in some complementary stuff, right? So
Hmm.
what is that? How does it work? Because see, for instance, what I use basically is balancing. Like if you look at
Hmm.
this particular slide also, the moment I work with the primary elements, the secondary elements, let's say these symbols in here or the
Yeah.
subtext on the top of it, the size of it. It's all dependent on the balance. I'm trying to balance it somehow.
Hmm.
It's not the weight that I'm balancing, right? I don't know whether that is the right way to say it, right? It's not the weight that I'm balancing. Uh, it could be the space, right?
Uh-huh.
So
Uh-huh.
that's one thought that I'm using. One thought that I always think about is that I need I use the balance is my starting thought when I'm trying to add these sort of micro elements into a design, right?
Hmm.
And that is something that when I started learning design and all that, and in my academic study period and all that,
Hmm.
this was not there. This micro elements, right? These artifacts they used to call it, right? That was never a thought, right? I never thought about it. Like the primary design is the only thing that I can. But the primary elements. So let's create a text that create a color, throwing all these four primary elements together, and you have a design. Your design is done, right? But then after a point, I started feeling that there is something missing in that design, right? We created everything. It's like the Frankenstein monster, right? We assembled everything, but we forgot to actually pass electricity through it. So it is not alive yet, right? There's something that we need to add to actually make it alive, right? I want people to say that okay, that's something special. So that is when I started thinking about what kind of element that I need to add to actually make people believe that okay, that's
Hmm.
it's not us you see it. I mean, straight away it's a functional design, but there is something more to it, right?
Hmm.
And this can be generated by just a texture, like you're throwing in a plastic texture on top of something, right? You put in a shape there, you add some sort of iteration to the shape, the images that you're using. Like I used to actually do like this kind of stuff where one section of the image has a lot of noise, the
Hmm.
remaining section will be smooth. And that is not something that people used to actually notice at first, right? That's people will not actually even care about that part. But there is
Hmm.
something which, in the sublime level, it will actually go into their mind. So when people are trying to look at that style or think about it, or when they are
Hmm.
remembering a design that I did, they will, so every time they will miss out these minute details that I've added into it. They will only remember this stuff. The beauty of that particular thing is that whenever they see my design again, it will
Hmm.
still appeal to them,
Okay.
right? Because if yeah,
I think in all of
because
that, what we are trying to do is it's not creating a good balance, but we are creating a good contrast here with these elements, a good dynamic flow of design.
definitely that actually brings to the next point, right? Bad
Hmm.
design always ignores contact contrast. So this contrast, yes, exactly. That is what I was saying. But this contrast that I was doing in a lot of my design
Hmm.
is not a primary information that is shared to the audience. It
Yeah.
might not actually go to them
Uh-uh.
directly, right? That is something that will go to them when the next time they're seeing it. So, see, a lot of designs that we actually, saw in here, and that's something that I've noticed in a lot of your designs as well, right? When you show me a design, right, and then later, if I'm trying to remember that design, the entire elemental structure and hierarchy will not come to my mind. It's just a piece of it. It's a concept of your design that will come to my memory.
Hmm.
It will still have that mystery there, right? So when I'm seeing it the next time, I'm equally surprised like the
Still
first time.
interesting. Yeah. Okay.
It's a
And
very
that's.
interesting, technique to actually grab people or
Hmm.
to make people return to something. Let's say if that particular feature is used in a website, right?
Hmm.
Every time, even if it's the same design, every time the user goes into a website, they are surprised. Otherwise, we are bored. We go to a website and we see the same design every single day. We are bored, right? So, but then if there is something that it's still the same design, but okay, that is an instant. What is that digital dopamine thing, right?
Yeah. Yeah. Yeah.
Yeah. So
It's.
that pilomotor reflex that people used to say that
Hmm.
it is often something which is used in music, right? So when you listen to a soundtrack and just proper musicians and all that, they actually include a lot of these sublime layers of
Yeah.
it could be the sounds, it could be the sounds at the right tempo, at the right time coming in and all that stuff, which your brain will not register. Right.
Hmm. Hmm.
So when you're trying to recreate that song or sing it from your memory or try to play it in your head and all
Yeah.
that, those
Yeah.
minute things will not come into your head. So
Hmm.
you feel that there is something missing. I can never replicate that song. And you go back and listen to that song, you are in that world again. Right. Every time you listen to it. So a lot of musicians actually do this, and I've noticed it most in our Indian musicians. I think I told you about A.R. Rahman.
Yeah, Rahman. Yeah, yeah.
So he basically does a lot of these things, and that's the reason I think there is a common sort of thing about Rahman's song is that you might have to listen to it multiple times to get addicted to that song. You will not actually understand it fully in the first, when you're listening to a track. The
Hmm.
first time you might not understand all the layers of it. The times that it grows with you, right? When you keep listening to it, it grows with you, and that is where each of the sublime elements are going into your head, right? And it'll
Hmm.
stay there. So in terms of design, we might not actually revisit a design like a song, right? We might not do it, but that elements that you're talking about, right? The kind of, if you can understand what needs to be there in a design, right, and what complements it perfectly, then it actually creates that same sort of attraction to a design, right? It creates the same sort of that what you say pleasure points. And when you watch it,
Yeah.
you are getting some sort of aesthetic pleasure from it. And every time that is there, every time you see a work, it is there, right?
Hmm.
So this happens a lot in your designs. I mean, you are sort of, I don't know whether you're intentionally doing it, but it is a
That's that.
property. Yeah,
Yeah, yeah. That was a really good observation. I hadn't thought about that. Like, this is something that might be happening on the other end. Because now that you're
yeah,
pointing it out, it's actually like that. Damn. Yeah, when you are actually recalling these designs, even the stuff that I see on the walls, there's
yeah,
something that's really cool about it. But when I recall it, it's not everything that I'm going to get. And then when I revisit it
yes.
again, it's the same surprise.
It's
Yeah,
it's the
that
same
happens.
surprise. You
That
actually,
happens.
yes, yes.
And
So that's a beauty of these things, right? When you try to understand it and when you're using it perfectly well,
mm-mm,
this creates a surprise, and it is sort of like an interactive design, right? It interacts with you every time when you visit that design. So when that part is completely missing and you don't know what you're doing with it, you will create these sort of misguided connections, which will make people hate your work, right, at the end of the
mhm.
day. So yeah, you were talking about contrast, right, the other day. So can you just explain contrast and how you use it in your design?
Lots of ways to do that. I think, if technically speaking, you can do it with spacing of the design. You can keep the elements just the same size, and if you have enough space, it's going to create a good contrast. You can do it with size. You can do it with just the image. Image in a way, like the image is so blown out that you can't make out the details, like what you have in your background.
It becomes it becomes an abstract, and you're not able to understand what is happening there.
Yeah, and when that happens, now the image is just a point of interest. It's not actually
Yeah,
asking you to read much into it. It's just going to
yeah.
pull you in, and then you're going to read the elements that the designer intended you to read.
Yeah. And I have noticed a lot of your contrast that you're sort of like using is
Hmm.
something that you're forcing on the. I'm not saying that the design is forcing it on the audience,
Hmm.
but you are forcing it on your elements. In especially the way that you use images and all that, and the motion blur. And I've seen the recent photographs that you have taken also,
Yeah,
right? So you are creating that contrast by forcing a particular technique into it, right? Like motion blur, and you basically have that same idea when you're using design in design also.
hmm,
When you take images, when you use colors and all that, you always think about the contrast. That is definitely there. You'll know that okay, this was really a thought out idea, like this imaging and all that stuff. Where is that inspiration coming from? That style is something that you have noticed somewhere, or it's
title
something that you
sequences.
developed by yourself.
A lot of title sequences, if I have to say.
Okay.
I think, a few of the stuff like imaginary forces, if you see their work and how they've used it,
Okay.
Girl Boss is a good example of that too. It's like 5 seconds, but within that, it just grabs your attention.
Okay.
Candy, if you remember, right? The
Candy,
Candy,
yes, yes, yes.
the way they did
The,
it.
I think Girl Boss also, I remember, it was sort of like a collage style
Yeah,
thing,
yeah.
right? Yeah,
It's
yeah, yeah.
very quick, but it just gets your attention and gets the vibe right there. And I think over
Okay.
the show, what they also do, they just change the music, but it still just carries on the vibe. And it's doing
Okay.
that with it with this contrast.
Okay.
Um,
So,
um,
okay, that basically coming from a motion media, right?
yeah, yeah,
So, but it's you're sort of adapting it to every project that
yeah.
you're working on. You don't. It is not only on videos. You basically
No,
use it on design, graphic design project, posters, and all those things. Um, so, how do you decide on this? Like, that is it becoming too abstract to a point that people are not able to understand this, right? So there is. the UX law, which was, I think we were talking about this the other day, where
Hmm.
there is a tendency that people, to minimize things, right, or to take affordance, to bring the affordance down of any product for that matter.
Hmm.
So they actually go to a point where it they minimize it to a level where it actually becomes abstract, too abstract, that people are not able to understand it. Right.
Hmm.
I think the example that somebody was using was a plus button, right,
Okay.
in one of the apps.
All
So
right.
let's say if you're going to into an app and you're seeing a plus button, right,
Hmm.
you don't exactly know what it does. It actually, the plus button can do a lot of stuff in different contexts.
Yeah.
Right. So what does it do is something which becomes too abstract at that point for the audience. Right. So,
Hmm.
how will you sort of draw that line? Or, not just in your case, but generally in your
Hmm.
observation, where should a designer draw a line there? I mean, is it becoming too, what is a fine art, or is it becoming like, standing in the same level as a design?
Okay. Let's think about it in this way. The context and the story is going to matter again a whole lot here. In a
Okay.
case scenario where it's more important that a person walks in and there's a lot of discovery that needs to happen, this thing can still be very controlled here. The plus button that you're talking about. It can just be a whole screen and there's just one plus button there. That's the only
Yes.
interaction. They click on it and there's the next thing that happens, and it could be just about anything. Maybe just ask them to
Depending on what the users want to do there, right?
yeah,
Okay.
yeah.
Okay.
Let's say, for example, the websites that we're talking about, a lot of websites that the neo stuff that's coming in,
Ah,
you go in there and there's one interaction that's really they're making use of is the scroll. You're gonna go in there and you're definitely going to scroll. But what the
okay.
scroll is going to do, it's not always conventional. And that surprises you. Maybe it just goes the other way, like it does it in David Carson's website.
Yes. Yes.
Maybe
Yes.
it just starts revealing stuff. I think
Hmm.
Lumen does that. Lumen's website, if you go there, Illusion, I think. If you go in that site, there's a lot of interaction that's happening. And the moment you start scrolling, it's going to play up slides of stuff. And
Okay.
the whole animation plays on as you are scrolling. That's
Hmm.
pretty new again. And it's not actually going against any of the affordance here. You are going to scroll. It's just
Okay.
what's being presented to you, it's different. So that's one case scenario, it works. You can be very
Hmm.
abstract. But
You cannot be. Yes. Yes.
if it's like you have to get somebody to put in the information and stuff, like the IRCTC stuff that we keep talking about,
Yeah.
if you do
Yeah.
that, then now that's going to be a problem. That
It's
is not
going to be a
where
problem. Definitely. Yes. Yes.
that is not a place for discovery. That is to communicate what exactly they need to do.
Hmm.
That is where it's going to matter how the information is well structured.
Okay.
Other case
So it,
scenarios is
it depends on the the use case, the audience who are coming, and what is their goal there, right?
yeah,
So if the user is somebody, I mean, the example that you said, if they are just browsing a design website, right,
yeah,
or if they are just looking for information and things like that, they have more time, they are more relaxed, and they can maybe experiment with abstraction, right?
hmm,
In those scenarios, even every element, I'm not just talking about a button, but it
yeah,
could be every element that is used in there, right? So even
hmm,
a background of a design, the website, the typography that is used in there,
hmm,
the type connection. See, many times, and it totally works, right? In a lot of your designs, um, the typography, the spacing, the kerning of the typeface, right? It just goes slightly above the norms, right? I mean, it breaks the norm of, okay, this is the tightest that they can actually get
yeah,
to. Then you just dial it one more notch, and then
yeah,
you say that, okay, there's two. So, but then that doesn't affect the functionality of the whole design, right? Because most of the cases that will be used in a scenario where the audience have more time to actually pay attention to it and understand it fully, right?
hmm,
So you're sort of making sure that it is not just a passive thing, it is active. So if you want to know, just look closer, right, and you will understand what it is supposed to, and
yeah,
then user will use that same sort of thing to operate on that website or take the call to action. If
yeah,
things are too
yeah,
relaxing, right, that is not going to work. See, the flow part, right?
hmm,
So if things are too easy, it is going to get boring. If the things are
hmm,
too hard, it is going to get frustrating. But if
yeah,
you can hit the right button, right, and you can get the right balance in between these two, and you're
hmm.
creating a perfect flow. So that is what I wanted to know. Like, how will you draw that line? But that's very clear. So Good, good.
Yeah.
Okay, so getting
Uh,
back to this, right?
yeah, yeah.
At least one typo.
We
This
gotta.
is really, really quite. And again, for people who just joined in right now, we are talking about how to make a bad design, and we are discussing the points that is required for it. So, in a bad design, typo means type errors, right? This is
Hmm.
mandatory, and we actually saw that in one of the examples right here when we were discussing that. I think
Yeah,
graphic
graphic
design.
design. Yeah,
Graphic design. I think it
yeah.
is. It's
Fifth,
yeah.
fifth.
It's sitting right there. Yes, graphic design. At least one typo is required, right? So this is
Hmm.
uh, without that typo, it is not a bad design. Now, see, how do you think? Like, and this is something of a suggestion to all the people who are actually looking forward. Um, with AI and all those things which are available right now, um, how are you using it currently, Mohit, for your proofreading, maybe content correction and things like that in your design? How are you using it? What is your process flow there?
I just use Apple Intelligence to just proofread the email. It just does that for you.
Okay,
And
but yeah,
a lot of
so that is something that you basically you cannot integrate it with the design tools that you're using right now, right? Is it
no,
no?
I don't think
So
not
how
that.
do you do that? How do you do that? You take it to
It's
maybe yeah
not
Notepad or
much. Not.
something.
I mean, yeah. If I have to do that for scanning, you can always do it through the notes. Uh,
Hmm.
that's where the it's going to work. If I'm not doing that, then yeah, I'll just go over the design once more, like when everything is done. Just look over it. And then if I'm not able to just take an image screenshot of that and you can just put it to ChatGPT and be like, proofread it. That's one
We
other way.
can see that is what something that surprises me right now also. Even
Hmm.
at this stage where these tools are available, I mean, AI is everywhere. It's available in WhatsApp also right now. So
Yeah,
the Meta
yeah,
chatbot and all that
yep,
is
yep.
there in what. So you have all this stuff right now, and then even now we can actually see a lot of typographic errors. Like I mean, this spelling mistakes,
Hmm.
grammatic errors in it, usages are wrong. So where there is no excuse anymore, right? Why are you making those mistakes, right? Why is that not being set? So what do you think? Why do you think that people are they're not giving enough importance to these kind of stuff right now in design?
I think the first thing is they're pretty confident, like what they did is right. So not a lot of attention
Yes.
is going like I can make a mistake, but
Okay.
yeah,
But
you can.
do you think that the timing,
Hmm.
time management is a problem there? Because
Oh, it
that's something
definitely
that I
is.
felt, yeah.
That's one of the other
Because when you're,
factors.
this is again something which actually comes in the first thing, like you have a process flow that I was saying, right? So
Hmm.
if you don't have a proper process flow, your timing or your timeline is definitely going to get, messed up. You're
Hmm.
not spending what is the time required for each of the stages, and by the time you're supposed to send the file, you're still working on it, right? And there is no time to correct it, to compress it, or any of that stuff, right?
Hmm.
It's a last minute thing. It's always a last minute thing. Maybe somebody's starting the work at the last minute and they're just running through the whole process and you don't have to spend any time there. And I don't think nobody will say that they are confident that whatever they have done is right. Right? Because most of the scenarios,
Hmm.
it's not the confidence. They don't care.
It's okay.
They don't care because
It's
I've seen this in portfolio projects, in their Behance portfolio projects that
hmm.
are supposed to be sent to an employer.
Hmm.
So when the employer goes through it, the title itself of the project is wrong, right? They have spelling mistakes there, the content of it, and the poster has major, grammatic errors and things like that.
Hmm.
But they don't care. They don't think about it. So more, and there is something which actually is fundamentally wrong in here is that there was this notion which was told by a lot of designers in our industry saying that design is separate and content is separate.
Okay.
Yeah, it still happens. It still
I
happens.
oh.
So the content part is
Uh,
not our responsibility, is what the designers will think.
mhm.
So content is given by somebody else, right? The content, usually that is what is going to happen, is what people are going to think, that the content will be given to you. You just copy paste it into your design and your
Mhm.
design is done. This can be done when your process flow is like, you have a template and you edit that template and paste everything that you have into that template, right? That's not how it works. You have to have a process flow where you ideated and you went through all the treatments which are possible with that content, right? But the content matters. The content is going to drive the design,
Mm-hmm.
right? You
Read it.
cannot just paste every content into it. See,
Mm-hmm.
something that we actually was talking. I mean, we previously discussed about this as well. Like when you go to this and let's say these kind of posters in here, right?
Mm-hmm.
This particular thing. This is a template, basically,
It is.
right? So anybody can actually buy this template and they can replace this content in here.
Mm-hmm.
So this can basically go for a school. This can go for, you know, um, a sexual transplantation surgery or something. Yeah, maybe anywhere. This will basically work, right?
Right.
You just need to change, the logo and then the title. The colors are the same. The background is the same. Everything is the same. The picture changes and this thing is right. That's it.
Mm-hmm.
So you're basically thinking that this is a lot of the people actually think that that is graphic design, right? Content will be prepared and it will be given to you in the last minute. You make the design ready and then plug it in. That's how they think. See, think about any creative product for that matter, right? Think about
Mm-hmm.
something that you can relate to, like a movie, right? How does it work, right? You start from pre-production. You write the story. You make it into a script. You write the dialogues. You take those stuff into the actor. You teach
Mm-hmm.
them how to act these scenes out. You bring the production, and then you take it to post-production and you do it. There is nothing like when you are going to the post-production, the editor will start working on it. There is nothing like the editor will be sitting with a timeline with all these blocked out, and then the filmmaker
Not
will
just
be in
replacing,
the
but it.
clips and
No,
he
no,
just
no.
drag and put it there. The music is already there, everything is there, just drag and drop it and the editing is done. That's not how movies are made.
Mm-hmm.
So movies, I just said the example that everybody will be able to relate to it, but if you think about any creative product, it is based on the content. The design or the aesthetics basically should come from the content that you're creating. Right. That's where you will be
Mm-hmm.
able to do something. See, for instance, we were looking at brochure designs right now in Google. Let's go to Pinterest and look at the poster design itself. See the kind of content that you see, right? These stuff will only work with this content.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
If you believe that you can just take a poster like this and then,
And change the text is not going to work because it's
yeah,
saying something with that design.
yes, exactly. So right from the beginning, the inception, the discussion itself, the theme was made, right? This is just a progressive format. So you started
Mm-hmm.
with discussing with the client, you understood the brief and everything, you sat together, you made a genre, you took a style, then you brought in all the elements and you thought about the treatments of images, right?
Mm-hmm.
You put it all together and the image came out at the end, the design came out at the end, right? You cannot skip a step. It's not possible for designs like this, right? You cannot just take the content and then go directly to step number 8 where you download a template from prepic.com and then replace it. That's not how it works, right? See, every design that you see, and this is again one of the different, Pinterest is not curated, right? But still, if you can easily see the difference right here, right?
Yeah.
So you're basically looking at where was this poster design in Google? Yeah, poster design in Google. This is what Google actually gives you. These kind of templates, which doesn't have any sort of personality to it. It's just a dead template, right? You just add
Mm-hmm.
whatever you want and call it graphic design. But the same keyword was we were using it in Pinterest, and we were able to see a lot of interesting stuff. And pretty much everything that you see is tailored to that content.
Yeah.
You cannot replace it. You cannot replace it with anything else. I mean, if you have to adapt it, you need to be very, very, very careful. Like how to actually take this element and adapt it into what I'm going to make. Right? You cannot just
Mm-hmm.
randomly do that. It is not as replicable, I would say. Right? It's very, very, very. I mean, even this stuff. Right? These are calendars. You cannot take it and put some random information into it. Right?
Okay, so we can. Oh, damn. Okay, nice.
Yeah. It's a
That's like
calendar. It's a calendar. And that works
that's like a
everything in
human
that
thing.
calendar.
Nice.
Beautiful it is. So you will be able to see stuff like this when you're exploring, when you're studying. And that's the other point that I wanted to sort of say here. If you want to learn design, right? Now this is the opposite of that, right? If you don't want to learn, uh, if you want to learn bad design, right? There will be a lot of opportunities to learn design. Deny them, right? Don't go in that direction. When you get a chance to read a book, don't do that. When you have chances to get onto the internet and study design, don't do that. When you have chances to interact with your mentor and then study design, resist it with every bit of energy that you have in your body, correct? So, because if you start to learn design, right, then as I told you in the beginning, right, it will be impossible to create bad design because that will be etched into your muscle memory. It will be very difficult. So if I ask Mohit right now to create a bad design, it's going to be impossible. Have you tried it, by the way, Mohit? Like, have you tried creating a bad design recently?
See, that's the difference. When a designer tries to do that, it becomes an anti-design, not bad design.
Exactly. That
Yeah.
you will not be able to make a bad design, right? Even with bad elements, even with when bad elements are thrown at you, somehow when I'm pretty sure that if I take it forward, I will make it into an anti-design. I will not make it into a bad design, right? So if I
Mhm.
take this, let's say if I take this image and then maybe add a filter into it, say blur or motion blur or something like that, it'll start to make a lot of sense right now. See,
Damn,
that's it.
looks much better.
That's it. And we know it, right?
Yeah.
This is in our muscle memory. We didn't even
Yeah.
think about it, but now it actually becomes much better. And I can keep
Mhm.
working on it to make it better, right? And
Mhm.
at the end, it'll become a good design. It will be anti design, it will be experimental design, but it will become a good design. Now, this is what I'm talking about. All of you can develop that skill, right? That muscle memory that you know exactly, even though you have the worst of assets with you, you can still make a good design with it. It is very hard to make a bad design when you learn design.
Mhm.
So the actual serious point here is that you need to study design, right? You need to spend time, read books, refer to a lot of design books. Um, I think
Look at a lot of
counterprint, right?
curated works. Yeah, contemporary is
Curated
one.
works, yeah, counterprint is one where you
Visionary.
can actually get a lot of amazing books in here.
Yeah.
And I found like when I was Googling bad design, right? So when we did this first,
Hmm.
I don't know whether you noticed it, but I actually found, and I was surprised, right? So, but
Okay.
it actually makes a lot of sense. I found a book. So I was going through this, and I think in images, and
I
I
saw
found
that. I
color
saw that.
clash. Yeah, you
Oh,
saw
is
it,
it?
right?
Oh, yeah.
It's color clash, but it's. I thought like, okay, did they actually put this as bad design? But I was going through it, and
Hmm.
they were actually mentioning that you know how much they miss this. They miss books like Color Clash. Right.
Okay.
So they're talking about if they are used, if it is thoughtfully used, right? Uh, this is a great design choice.
Hmm.
This is a counterprint book, right? I think
I have that. I have that.
you have that book, right?
Yeah.
Oh yeah, that's right there.
See, that's the thing.
You
So
show
what?
some, yeah, yeah,
Yeah. See, look at that. But what's happening here is it's talking about clashing colors. So a lot of these, like if you look at the print itself, this is not a
yes,
combination that anybody would use because
true.
it's creating that darkened area. But the thing is, if it's used in a right circumstance, look at that. These designs.
Whoa, yes.
Right. Oh, wait.
It's
Is it
sort of
gone?
like fading into your background. Yeah,
Whoa.
okay, okay. You have to keep it closer to you. Yes, yes,
Yeah.
yes.
I. Oops. Okay. I'm
Yeah,
just
yeah,
gonna put
it
you
was,
closer
it
to that.
was.
So stuff like that, it's
True.
going to work. So context is always going to matter. That's what I'm talking about. So once you know the rules, you can go ahead and break them. What the rules are doing is it's kind of letting you know what works. That's the discipline that it's getting you familiar with. Once that's there, you don't have to follow those rules. You can go beyond that. And that's what this book is doing. Even look at that. I think that's what this is going to be. You
Yeah,
stuff.
yeah.
Doesn't work if you take it as a novice. But he used it in a context and this kind of works.
Yes, exactly. That actually matters. If you have an idea, right? If you
Mhm.
have that foundation of good design in you, then you can actually play with all the stuff. So a lot of people that I've seen, like I'm not talking about designers, right? Users also, they are not actually their eyes are not trained to this concept yet, right?
Yeah.
So they think a lot of things. And it's not the best area. I mean, even I think Shivani actually wrote a recent article. Did you read about it?
Which one? What's the title?
Um, I think how to make your portfolio or something like that. I forgot.
Okay, okay, okay. Yeah, I might have. Yeah, yeah. He was talking about just taking up projects, making your own briefs, and then working with that to make your
Yeah, yeah,
portfolio.
yeah. How to make a good portfolio is what she mentioned. I think it
Mm-hmm.
is.
Go to Medium, it's there.
Yeah, I think this one, LinkedIn. So yeah, one of the points that I had to mention here was so she's writing about how to find inspirations and all that. Um, this is the point that I want to insist on, right? If I say it, it's going to be repetitive, but that's the reason I actually mentioned her. So
Mm-hmm.
if you are looking for inspiration, maybe skip India.
Slow
If
down.
I say this once again, I will be classified as an India hater or somebody. But it's not that, right? It's not about that. It's a fact. It's a fact that we have to dive into. We have to understand, especially being designers and all. This is not something that I said, right? But uh, when you're a designer, there are certain things that you have to let go, right? And
Mm-hmm.
one thing could be like this. I mean, looking at Indian designs and you're trying to take inspiration from that, right? It is going to ruin your career. And one of the major things that a lot of designers actually talk about right now is that we are not getting opportunities. Like we are not able to grow, and we are not able to. And I had a lot of discussions with these people. Their only problem, right, are the limitations that they have created for them.
Mm-hmm.
Right? They're very limited. They don't know much beyond maybe Adobe Photoshop or Illustrator or InDesign. That's their world, right? They think that the graphic designer needs to be in that world. Everything else is irrelevant to them. What the world is making, what other designers are making, nothing actually makes or nothing matters. What they know about the tool is the only thing that actually matters there, right? So I
Correct.
told you about this also, why this is happening, because about the evolution of designers. uh, Everywhere else, right? Graphic designers, the past graphic designers evolved into present graphic designers, right?
Mm-hmm.
In India, it didn't happen. There were past graphic designers who stopped evolving when computers came to India.
They didn't
Right.
transition to that.
So
They
it
just.
started, yeah, they didn't transition to computers. They actually quit or they went into a different job role. What
Mm-hmm.
happened is that people who studied computers got into graphic design with no history or no discipline of graphic design. They
Mm-hmm.
started learning the tools faster. They started learning and they became experts in this After Effects, Illustrator, Photoshop, all that stuff, Flash and things like that.
Mm-hmm.
But the that genetic quality of design was lost. It was not there. They were computer experts. They are still computer experts. And the designers currently that we see right now, the majority of them evolved from that branch.
Actually, if you think about it, that's why you see so many effects there because they were so much into the computer and effects it could provide. So that is what they
Yes,
were leaning towards a whole lot. It was never about like
that yes, yes.
that's why stuff were looking
They
like that.
there is no story for any of the stuff, right? So if you think about, I think the only designer who is still functional from that era, and she's
Mhm.
not even functional anymore. I think Sujata Keshav. I think I told you about her, right? She is the only Indian, but I think she stopped working. I think after I don't even remember what was her last project, but
Mhm.
so yeah, she's National Institute of Design, NID in 1984.
Yeah.
Okay, so yeah, she had this company called Ray and Keshav, did a lot of
Mhm.
logos, did a lot of branding as well at that time. But then I think after that's done, see, you look at her Wikipedia profile, there is nothing, right? You go to some international graphic designer, let's say Massimo,
McNeely, yeah.
and look at his profile, right? It just goes on and on and on and on and on like that. Look at the publications, look at the awards they got, right?
Mhm.
And these are the guys who actually started from that time period, right? 1931. He died when he was
Even
83.
earlier.
He was working till that time. He was working till 2014, right? So But there is nobody like that in India. There's nobody. All of them stopped working. There is not a single senior graphic designer in India. Somebody who's old, wiser, somebody who could be like, all of them came from this background. And there is another kind of people who actually came from arts background to
Mhm.
design. But that's again a different category of people. Their tendency is more to create art. That they're really good in digital art. So art and design is completely different domains, right? They might not be able to adapt quickly to the trends
Yeah, yeah.
because they're very disciplined in art. They learned art with a lot of discipline. And when they come into design, that will be broken. Right? It's a completely different thing. You have to rebuild art basics, right? Art fundamentals are very, very constant. It will not change, right? It is whatever you have learned in the 30s and all that is still the foundation for it, right? It still works on that foundation. But design is not like that. Everything changed. Medium changed, rules changed, the
Mhm.
concept, the user changed, everything, the laws changed, who's going to watch design, everything is changing right now. And if you look at art, for that matter, the art audience hasn't changed.
Mhm.
The audience of the art is same, right? They were looking for the same thing in art in 1931, in 2014, in 2024. They were looking for the same stuff, right? The design audience is very tough. So that's where things actually went a different way.
Excellent.
So I would still say that. But like what Shivani said, skip India when you are actually trying to learn graphic design. I'm not saying that do not learn graphic design from India. You can do that. But when you are looking at examples, right, when you are looking at, okay, this is what I need to study, this is what I need to actually adapt into my lifestyle and all that stuff, I would say that skip it, right? Because there is a lot of other sources. You can definitely take that. And design is very universal right now. There is nothing called Indian design. There is nothing called, you know, I mean, even in movie, in filmmaking, there is still an Indian filmmaking making because industries are different. There is nothing like Japanese graphic design. There is nothing like American graphic design and all that. Graphic design is universal, right? It works everywhere. So you can actually look at the world, right? But when you try to actually look at people around you, when you try to look at things which are around you for inspiration, that's not going to work out, right? So just to summarize the thing that we actually discussed, right? This is the right way, right? Whatever we spoke about, if there is anybody who is in the stock from the beginning, like,
Yeah.
um, see, the first thing is that having a very proper, and you need to evaluate yourself, right, to understand a good workflow. I think that is very, very important. You need to understand your strengths, right? So, for instance, I'm a person who takes very little time in a software. I'm really fast with the tools that I use because I can switch back between devices. I work on mobile phone. I make designs. For all the Instagram stuff that I'm making, I do it on phone. I do it with PixArt and Canva, like most of the time. So I can work like that, and so which means that I can work really fast when it actually is ending. Right, the project
Mhm.
to execute the project, I can do it really fast. So based on that, I have a workflow, right? I need to spend more time thinking about the idea, maybe gathering data for doing it. That might actually require more time. With the software, I might need maximum 5, 10 minutes, right? I can do it. Even in terms of editing video, cutting and putting videos together and all that, I take that's where I spend the least amount of time in my whole process flow, right? That's for me. There could be people who are slow with the software, right? So maybe you might have to take a workflow or choose a workflow where you are giving enough time to actually work on the tool, right? You might have to figure out things on the way, like how do I do this? Then you have to do some research, find out the tool to get it done. You might have to study that, do it. So you might need a little more time cushion there in that area. Right. So
Mhm.
accordingly, you can actually adapt a workflow. Um, Second point that we discussed about is trust legitimate sources, right? And get inspired. So rather than looking at Google, because I just showed you how Google cheats you, right? Disguises, good design, bad design in terms of graphic design and all that stuff. So do not go with Google. Good
Mhm.
typography is critical. Um, it can just easily break a design, right? So I told you when typography is when Mohit was saying also he said that type is one of the primary elements that you work with, right?
Yeah.
Because if type goes wrong, everything whatever else you do, it can still be wrong. We're
Mhm.
actually talking about a recent photo slideshow. The photos
Mhm.
were great,
Oh yeah,
Everything was
was
great,
great.
but there was one bad typography in that slideshow which
Hmm.
ruined that experience for me. Right.
Yep.
I kept staring at that bad typeface. I didn't look at the pictures, right? Kept staring at it. Why is that there? I cannot. So that happens, right? Uh, be safe when you're unsure. Do not go with something that you're not sure about. Like you randomly go to the phone and you take something which is like groovy and all that, and you're using it without understanding how to control it. Right? You need control. You need to have good control over typeface. Right? Even if you're taking something a little over the top, you are the person who should control it with using the right kerning, right scale, right weight, and all those things, even colors. You should be in control of it. But
Hmm.
many times when I see a design, the typography went beyond your control and it ruined everything. Right? It's just there, ruining everything else that you have done. So if you are not in control, if you feel that, okay, I am not very good with typography, fall back to something which is very safe, very maybe a mono typeface or a sans serif typeface, which is easier to handle and control.
Hmm.
You cannot make too many mistakes with it, right? So be safe rather than being bad, right? That's one thing that you can always do. Um, Work with a cohesive concept. Again, we are talking about that, right? Do not over design and put stuff into it.
Hmm.
You need to think about how things are coming together in harmony, creating or telling the same story. Everything in your design element should say the same story. It should not say that, okay, I don't belong here. I'm just checking it out and all that. You cannot put an element like there. I mean, that element should also have a function, something. It could be very minimal, but you can say that, okay, I'm putting that element for this particular reason, right? You should have that justification in your mind. Understanding the contrast that you are building in your design. Right? When you are using certain elements, let's say, I think we discussed in the previous session,
Hmm.
right? The cropping of images that we used, right?
Yep. Yep.
See,
Hmm.
in this particular background that you see here, or this background that you see on the slide, right?
Hmm.
It's an actual image. It's a full image, right, of a lady walking and all that. But if I'm using that there, the entire image, my contrast is going to be split. Right. The attention is going to go to both of them and it will be competing with each other. Right.
Hmm.
People will look at the girl and then they will be confused. Right. There is a disorientation that I create with the lack of contrast, or maybe not careful consideration of how I want to use the contrast. Right.
Yep.
So you need to have that control. And I told you about Mohit and how he creates that contrast with strong noises, right? Motion blurs, right? It's
Hmm.
beautifully done. Um, and a type which actually breaks on everything right on top of that, sitting this plain white, very simple typography, it's sitting right on top of that, and that actually works. That makes a lot of impact than a full image which tells the whole story, right? So that's another approach, right? When you're using an image, the image takes the center stage. It takes every attention, right? That's the power of an image.
Hmm.
But you cannot actually give that control to the image. Just like typography, you need to control the image. You need to say that, you're under my control and I will decide how much attention you get, right? And you need to actually force it there. So that is when you have control over each of those elements. That is when you're a great designer, right? You will move from being bad to good to great, right? You should be able to do that when you understand contrast. Now, proofread your designs, whatever you are making. It is super easy right now. So,
Hmm.
but when I see this, it's two reasons. One is you don't care. The second thing is that you are rushing, right? Um, See, there is no point in rushing with these stuff, right? Because your goal, basically, when you're studying design, your goal is to show how much you can actually do,
Hmm.
right? So if you do your bare minimum and show it to us, you're saying that this is what you can do, right? So that's you cannot even use it to judge you or evaluate you. You need to spend whatever time that you have to show what is the best that you can do with that time that you got. It could be like one day, it could be 1 hour, it could be um, 10 minutes. If I'm asking you to design something in 10 minutes, you should be able to do something using that 10 minutes that you have. Right. And this is what I am able to do with 10 minutes that I have right now at this point of my life. Maybe 2 years from this point, I will be able to do something better in 10 minutes. Right. That's how you grow. But you don't do that. You don't know your potential when you're rushing through stuff. Right.
Hmm.
You don't have to do that unless it's a time-based pressure test or something. Nobody is going to do this to you. You will be given enough time to work on any projects. So do that properly with the time. The first point that we said, right? You have a workflow. Divide your time between these workflow and do it properly. And last thing is that learn design properly. Uh, do it with an actual source, right? I mean, what do you say?
Not keep stressing on it. Just go look at It's Nice That vlogs, the videos that they're
Yes,
putting up there, the kind of conferences they have, and they're putting it on YouTube for
exactly.
free.
It could be all of that, all the sources, right? It's nice that is there. Then I think awards is there.
Yeah,
The future is there. So if you look
yeah.
at all of those things, you will be able to understand what kind of talks do they do, like what is good design. That's the first thing that you need to learn. Definitely, then when you are looking at stuff, and okay, one other thing that I wanted to actually say here, because there was a question recently, I think by Evelyn.
Okay.
Evelyn, are you there in this call?
I think she's on a leave right now. She might not
No,
be.
she was there.
Oh,
I saw her.
okay. Oh, hey, hello.
Oh yeah, she's here. Okay.
What is the question?
Evelyn, are you there? Okay. Oh, yeah. She was asking this thing that she was having a lot of difficulty, and this is not just her, right? I've heard it from a lot of students
Hmm.
saying that the toughest part in learning
Hmm.
is learning the tools,
Okay.
right?
Uh-huh.
So, what is your approach on that? Like, how do you learn new tools? How do you
I
approach
think
it?
I think I asked you the same question like 2 years back or something,
Yes.
and it was regarding all the 3D software on because if you go into it and it takes a lot of time to get
Mhm.
familiar with the whole thing. What you suggested was like just make something, make something
Yeah.
that you can achieve at this point. Just follow it to do anything. Just make something out of it. And what ends up happening is, while you are trying to make that thing, you are learning a
Going to
whole lot
learn
about
about
the
it.
tool, and then you have an end
Exactly.
result that you can actually work with it. And
Yes.
that
See,
worked. I think
that's the best way to learn any tool, right? So when you actually go to a tool, normally what happens whenever we learn a tool
you
from
try to get
YouTube or
clued
any
into
other
this.
software. Okay, okay. I hope you're doing good, Evelyn.
Mhm. That's
Right.
okay. You don't have to
So,
talk again. Text if there's
you
anything.
know, we got the question already. Last
Hmm.
time she was actually asking me this. So, one of the problems that they have is even when you look at YouTube tutorials of tools and all that stuff, there is a particular narrative for teaching tools, right? They talk about the UI of the tool and they talk about
Hmm.
every single tool and what it is used for and all that stuff. So what happens is that your load is getting longer. I mean, it's actually stretching, right? Your knowledge, whatever bias or load that you have, it's overloaded with these information about what this
Hmm.
icon does, what does the file menu have, what all these tools have, and all that. By the time you want to learn something important, your mind is already overloaded and you don't have any space to get anything new into it. So whatever the
Hmm.
important stuff, you will forget that. You will just know only how to actually open a file, maybe right, close the file, and these are things that will stay with you. So one thing is where you just don't follow that narrative when you're learning a tool, right? You want to learn a tool for a particular reason. Let's say
Hmm.
I wanted to learn Cavalry to do some motion graphic, a particular motion graphic technique, and that
Hmm.
is only available in Cavalry. I want to do it. I think we discussed about it. We were searching for a tool which actually
Yeah.
let us do
2D
dynamics,
physics.
right?
Yeah.
A 2D tool, yeah, which
Hmm.
actually let us do dynamics and all that. And I was searching for tools. Nothing was available at that point. There was one plugin which was for After Effects, which was very pricey also. So we're
Hmm.
looking for it and we found Cavalry, installed it, everything, set it up. I was testing it out. It immediately said that this feature is available only on the paid version. Right? That physics thing. But again, I had a goal in my mind. I wrote to them saying that I am a mentor. I'm just testing it out and all that. They gave me 1 year free access for that,
Hmm.
right? For Cavalry. I think for a reduced fee or something. It's very expensive. So I got a huge discount and I'm using that free plan for Cavalry. So I was able to play around with all those tools. So just went in. I just wanted to understand how this thing works, right? The dynamics. Before that, I went and I looked at some Cavalry videos and all that. It's talking about, okay, this is Cavalry. This is how you create a new composition. And maybe like 1 or 2 hours actually went talking about the interface and stuff like that. We don't want any of that. We know how interfaces work.
Hmm.
We have used several tools. We know like what
Hmm.
this button actually means. We know that if you click on the, you know, what do you say,
Any of the tools,
floppy
like
disk
what
button,
is
it
it?
is going to, yeah,
Yeah.
we know it already. We don't want them to actually say it again. I just jumped into that topic. How do you actually do physics? That's it. Right.
Mhm.
That particular specific thing, I just saw one video, I went into it, I just studied only that part. And then while I was doing this, I figured out how to create the composition, setting it up in this, how to
Mhm.
create motion blur, how to enable motion blur for elements, what are the types of motion blur I can enable, and all that stuff automatically came to me. Right. But if I was going in the actual, it could have taken at least 1 year to learn it. But I can actually pretty much do anything in cavalry right now because I learned it like that. I learned it with a goal in my mind, and I know that
Mhm.
okay, I've learned pretty much everything. I can just tweak it and I can create something. Right. So every tool is like that. You have a goal in your mind, you go and create only that stuff, get out. That's it. That whenever you need it, you just learn that. It's going to take maybe 15 minutes for you to learn on that particular thing, right? How to
Mhm.
export maybe a PDF file from InDesign. You
Mhm.
can learn it in 5 minutes, export it. That's it. When you need it, and the internet is always going to be there. It's not just going to go right one day. Whenever you need it, just use it. That's it. So you don't think of like, I need to actually understand everything about InDesign to actually do something on InDesign. Think about Photoshop, right? As a
Mhm.
designer, we are just using 20% of Photoshop.
Yeah.
The 80% we never touch it, right? There's a lot of things that you can do in Photoshop that we are not even aware of, right?
Mhm.
But we can do this. We are not touching that stuff. And again, every tool that you want, right? We just use just a certain percentage of it. And if you need it, just use it only for that. For instance, let's say if I want to use 3D right now, 3D tool
Mhm.
or something like that, I'm definitely not going to model it. I'll get the model. I just need the rendering to be that. Right. So I will be only looking at how to render stuff out of, let's say, Blender or Cinema 4D or Twinmotion or Unreal or anywhere. I will be only looking at that aspect when I need it. Right. I might use it. And I might forget about that stuff also because I don't need that load on my mind. I don't
Yeah.
want to keep remembering like at the night and all that. Okay, you go to this button, you click on this, and you click on render and all that stuff. I don't want because by the time I just by heart the whole thing, they will release a new version and the setup will be completely different. Right? So
Mhm.
don't have to do any of that stuff. Don't think about tools like that. Right? Tool is something that you just have to. It's a shortcut. Right? When you need it, just maybe do a Google search or maybe ask ChatGPT how to get this done in InDesign or Photoshop. Get it done. Get out. Right? So it's not the tool, right? It's in you. It's how much you know about stuff, how much you are simplifying your process, right? What exactly needs to be made. Then you are deciding what is the tool that I need to actually use to get this done. Right?
Mhm.
You have complete control over that. And think about the number of tools which are actually there. There was a recent tool which came out right now called I think Jitter Design.
Okay.
Have you
Yeah.
heard
Yeah.
about Jitter Design?
Yep. Yep. I have.
It's a
Uh,
free motion design tool.
mhm.
And
Mhm.
it's super simple, and you can directly export Figma designs to Jitter, and you can animate that there, right? In the way that you cannot do it in Figma. It's like super easy. You just select the stuff, apply an animation, add a presets into it. It creates some beautiful fluid animations there,
Mhm.
right? Things are getting easier in that sort of way to make objects, designs, and stuff like that. Whatever you need, basically, right? It is super easy. So don't waste your time thinking that you have to master a tool to become a designer. You don't have to master anything, right? You
Mastering a
just have to
design skill.
master your design, right?
Mhm.
Design knowledge. How much you know about design is something that you have to master. Just ignore the tools. Just leave it like that.
I think the
Cool. I
focus.
hope. Yeah. Just send it in.
Yeah, yeah. I was saying like the focus is mostly. I think the way the question was even formed, it's became more about the tool because they're like, okay, this is what I need to do for me to go ahead for the next part. You don't have to do that. The focus can just be okay. What is the output that you want, and through that you can learn the tool. That could still always be
You can.
secondary.
Yes, and this is something that we've told about, right? So in resume, CVs, and things like that, they write it
Mhm.
like Photoshop 80%, 90% of Figma. After this is what happens, right? This is
Oh,
what exactly happens. You cannot actually go with those kind of
uh,
data to the world saying that I know 80% of Photoshop.
good for
You
you.
don't even know 10% of Photoshop. What are you saying 80% of Photoshop? I don't know 80%. I don't even know 50% of Photoshop, right? People are putting like 80% on based on what? Based on the things that you have learned.
Mhm.
So basically, you have learned 10% of Photoshop. In that 10%, you know 80% is what you are mentioning. But they put it
That
like,
was a
I
different
don't know
metrics.
Photoshop. I know
Yeah.
80. That's a different. So they put it like Adobe Photoshop 80%, Adobe After Effects 95%.
What?
What is it? And then you'll ask me, do you know anything about expressions? What are expressions? A facial expression? Yeah. Yeah, yeah, forget about it. So
Right.
those are the kind of stuff, right? You need to
Mhm.
stop giving so much of weightage to tools, right? Just ignore them. Just instead of that, start writing about how much you know about graphic design, how much you know about branding design and things like that, and then put that in your CV.
Yeah.
Tools can be, if you're serious about tools, then put it on a corner in one box or something. These are the tools that I know right now.
Hmm.
Uh, it's sort of imposing the number of tools that we have to use in a day, right? It's huge. How will you put that into a resume? It's like you might have to put a QR code there if you want to see my complete list of tools. Scan this and you will see a list on Wikipedia of all the tools that you're using. You will not be able to add all the tools into your resume. I mean, maybe in the next 1 year you won't be able to because see,
Hmm.
think about the AI tools that we are using. Think about all the productivity tools that we are using. Think about
Hmm.
I think I am using at least 15 to 16 subscriptions on a daily basis. Right. It could be Tweak. It could be. Although I started using Bear affirmations, by the way, like
Oh, you
Bear's
did. Oh,
the
damn.
complete
Okay.
model.
Okay. Okay. Nice.
It's so beautiful. It's so beautiful. I mean, even in managing stuff, right? So
Hmm.
journaling, right? Everything
Yeah.
became so beautiful, and how it actually works, what happens on each day, and I'm seriously taking it, the reward system and all that stuff. Uh,
Nice.
I'm using habits from there, like
Hmm.
the I think there is something called habits, right?
Okay.
So all the habits that I have, right? So I think it opens in phone right now.
Okay.
So if I'm doing a weekly mood board and all that, I can just say that it's done.
Oh, yeah. This guy.
So it sort of like does a
Hmm.
a gamified thing, like it
Variation
sort
of
of
that.
builds your base, right? So you are here, you can keep building stuff like that, and all the habits which are basically right here. Whatever I want to do, it's okay. I'm not able to go back.
Oops.
There are certain things that doesn't work in iPhone mirroring, but yeah. But all that stuff like the habits, then I think I have
There's
oh,
Karen. Okay.
the calendar
Oh,
stuff,
yeah.
and this is so beautiful. Like the way that it actually comes in, all that stuff is actually really interesting.
Yeah. Hmm.
I think the side scrolling is also not there. Yeah, the today's session which is right there, and these are subscribed. I think these are paid plans, right?
Hmm.
So then Tweak, then 11 Labs. I subscribe to that right now for
Okay. For narration and all.
voice and stuff like
Nice.
that.
Hmm.
Yeah. So I have a paid premium plan for that right now. And it's regularly coming into my toolkit right now. So for any kind of videos and things that I'm making, I'm actually using that. Then I have Luma for all the AI stuff that I'm doing. I
Hmm.
have Sora right now. I have Firefly. I have the ChatGPT right in here. So the tools, if you look at this, right, these are the set of tools that I use. Besides the online tools, can I put all those into my CV? And if I don't put everything, it doesn't make any sense either. Right. So I'm just putting like Adobe Creative Cloud, and that's very limiting, right? I know much more than that. So how will
Hmm.
I represent that in my CV? So those kind of things are sort of dated. You shouldn't actually do that anymore, and shouldn't be scared of any of the tools, right? If you're not happy with the tool, just skip it and go to the next one. There are better alternatives, and so many out there. Like so,
Hmm.
you will never be stuck with. So, and if you're not really good at one particular skill, let's say if I cannot actually make geometric icons and stuff like that, I will not waste my time trying to learn that. I know that it's
Hmm.
okay. It's not something which is that important that I learn it. I can actually buy it or I can actually get it for any of the designs that I'm doing. I will be able to create something with it, with the skills that I already have. So, or maybe if it is not possible, I can buy it from a source. Right. I don't
Yeah.
have to do everything by myself. I'm a designer. I'm not an artist. Right. I don't have to do that. I'm just like a filmmaker. I don't have to act in my movies. I can hire an actor to do it. Right. So it's possible. So don't think that you have to do everything. You are a designer. You have a lot of opportunities out there. So yeah, so that's basically it. And hope I don't know how many are there right now. It's 12. I
No.
checked. Yeah, I think it's majorly the faculty and all that. But I hope
Yeah.
we got a video. So
Yeah.
this is all about that, right? So this is
Mm,
we wanted to create some good content, and that's
mm.
and
I
that
mean,
worked. So we went in with Google. Yeah.
it's still out of the people who are students here. Do you have any questions for everything that we've talked about so far? This is your chance. I okay.
Any
I
questions, guys?
any
Okay, yes.
questions?
Navi is there. Abhilash was also there. Okay.
Hmm.
Yeah, that's fine. Okay.
Okay,
So
that's fine. Yeah.
we'll be sharing this video soon. And
Mhm.
thank you, Mohit. This was really good. In
Thank
case
you
some
for having me here.
questions. All right, all right.
Pretty cool stuff.
Thank you, guys. Thank you for recording this, Raka. And bye bye. See you soon.
Check out.
Excuse me, sir.
Oh,
Yes, Abhilash.
Yeah, I was like, there was a network unstable in between. So can you send the recorded version?
dude, we'll be uploading
Um,
it like we did for the.
it will be in, yeah, it will be in YouTube.
Oh, okay, cool.
All right. Thank you. Bye bye. Take care.
Thank you,
Have a
thank you.
nice weekend.
It,
You too, sir.